Hello, and welcome to Lore Watch, a roundtable freeform discussion about lore in your favorite media. I'm your host, Joe Perez, one of several lore-focused folks from Blizzard Watch, and I've got my stalwart barbarian companion with me, Matt Rossi. How you doing today, Matt?
All things must be destroyed.
Well, that is definitely one way of taking what we're talking about today. So you may have noticed, but a little game, Diablo 4, released an expansion in the last week. And with that came a whole new campaign, a whole new story, a whole new class with a bunch of lore tie-ins to stuff that we have barely covered, which I think is absolutely wonderful. There's a lot of opportunity here. So that said, if you have not finished the campaign, there are going to be spoilers in this episode. Heck, there's probably going to be spoilers for me because, full disclosure, I haven't finished the campaign yet, but Matt has done it twice. So
I'm working on my third.
It's going to be phenomenal. I just keep getting distracted by shiny objects. Like, I actually rolled the seasonal character for the first time. So I've been playing my Spiritborn on that, and then my Druid has been doing the main campaign because I love my Druid. I'm Druid main for life. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the campaign. And it's an interesting continuation, right? It's one we already knew was happening. They sort of led with it at the end of the Diablo 4 campaign to begin with. Nerubian has the Soul Stone. She goes off and she's trying to find a way to essentially banish Mephisto or deal with Mephisto for good so that she's not tied to the stone and it doesn't have to be foisted upon anybody else. A noble task, but she's still just a child who just very recently, within the last couple days at beginning of this journey, watched her mother get killed after her mother sided with Lilith.
How long do you think the events of the original campaign took?
Not very long. If you go through
I think a month. I think about a month.
I think it's less than that. I think it's actually less than that.
Only reason I think a month is because at one point you basically have to travel the breadth of the continent. Like, you go from the Fractured Peaks up to Skosglen or over to, the Dry Steppes and then over to Skosglen or down, it's just the amount of travel time. It feels to me like it has to be at least 3 weeks, if not a month. And that's, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, 3 weeks is generally what I'm thinking, because you definitely go through a bunch of day-night cycles and things like that. But even then, that's not a lot of time. And,
no, not for all the stuff that she goes through. No, God, no.
And not only that, like, on top of losing a hand, on top of watching her mother be killed by the Wanderer, because you don't have a choice, because her mother chose Lilith and Lilith's pass over her own family, because of the promise of knowledge and all this other stuff, dealing with that, dealing with the Haradrim and all of the drama there, losing Dawnin, losing essentially Lorath at that point too, because, that's a whole other
Cocoa Buffs at that point.
A little bit. And then the Wanderer essentially making her make the decision, which was a big thing, because that's the other thing. You didn't decide to trap Mephisto in the Soul Stone. Nerubian did, because you gave the stone to her and you made her choose while you dealt with Lilith. Which, again, she's a child, and yes, it's Sanctuary, and yes, you are forced to grow up and mature relatively quickly, but you're still a child. So she's not in a great place, and she's got one of the prime evils in a Soulstone prison whispering in her ear. So that's where the campaign starts up, and I'll kick it over to Matt.
Yeah, there's a ton of things we could talk about, and I know we're going to miss stuff, which is driving me crazy.
We're probably going to have to do a second episode on this, right?
Almost
legitimately.
But I will try to broad strokes this. Your character is basically, I think you have to be in Kyovashad to see this, so you have to travel to Kyovashad.
It's the first thing. It's the first thing that happens.
Yeah. You go to Kyovashad and you basically see that people are being burned to death. Like they've got stakes and they're putting people on pyres and burning them. And you're like, what the heck is going on? And you find out that only two of the Cathedral of Light actually managed to make it back from hell. One being, Prava. The other being a guy named, I want to say Uluvesh. I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Maybe Udavesh. I don't know. But he's essentially a big dude who's got a giant face mask on because his face is all burned up
he's the only survivor besides Parva, supposedly.
And Prava is actually coming off like the reasonable one here. It's actually weird when you get there and you see what's going on. Prava has somebody that she's basically... I want to make this clear. Prava has kidnapped and tortured this person until they confess everything they know about Lorath. That's what she's done to him. Then she offers him forgiveness, which he eagerly takes.
So I want to actually run something by you real quick, because this is something that I think is an interesting moment, right? Because when you last see Prava, she wants nothing to do with you. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure she threatens you, like she doesn't want to see you ever again. Yeah. And then this happens.
Yeah. So, this guy, I'm going to say Udavesh. I can't remember how to pronounce this guy's name. And that's my bad. I played the game. I played this thing twice, and I was just constantly calling him Udi. He's like, she's like, we're going to forgive this man now that he's confessed and he's begged for forgiveness. And he interrupts her. He's like, with all due respect, Reverend One, did this man, he just asks for forgiveness, and it's okay that, he works with a man who killed our friends and fellow believers, that he's working for someone who has betrayed the world, but he gets off with that while our own men burn to death in hell? I don't think so. Who here wants to see him burn? And they're all like, "Yay, burn him." And you see, it's actually well done, because it's very hard to do character acting with models that are relatively low res and small. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not to say that they don't have high res models in this game, but this is an in-game cinematic. It's not one of the big cutscenes with all the rendered stuff. This is happening in the game engine, but with the body language, you can see that this Udavesh character is pushing himself forward. He's inhabiting the whole space. He's taking over. And you can see on Prava the realization that she is not in charge anymore. Mm-hmm. And part of the problem is that when she was in charge, she was the Reverend Mother because she could turn to, Inarius. Inarius picked her. So while he was around, she had his authority behind her. Mm-hmm. If anybody tried to step up like this, she could just slap him down by referring to Inarius, but she can't do that anymore. She doesn't know what happened to Inarius. She knows he's gone. She knows she isn't getting anything from him. And this guy is saying he speaks for the light. And he's got as much moral authority as her because he's the other person who survived hell. So they burn the crowd supports him. They burn this guy to death. Prava realizes, this is going off the rails. You are then involved in this because you're trying to find Lorath. Because you're like, these people want to go after Lorath. And you're like, they're probably going to come after me too, but I don't care. But they're going to go after Lorath. So you go to Lorath's place where there's this messenger who saw you in Kyovashad and finds you, and they've basically had their legs broken. These guys were torturing her, and they'd already broken both of her legs.
Yeah, you fight your way to them too. Let's make that perfectly clear. It's not you go and find the survivor.
No, you fight your way through I think 30 or 40 guys just to get
guys too, in the armor, big guys.
Yeah. You remember the armor that Diego was wearing? The one that they basically clamped him into? The penitent armor?
It was like that, but on fire.
Yeah, now they're setting them on fire too, which is just great. And you get in there, you fight your way through, you finally you get to this woman, and she's like, had a message. I was trying to find Lorath. We saw Nerel heading into the Nahantu, and I need, we need to tell him. And Prava shows up. Prava literally walks out of a corner and goes, "Oh, hi, by the way, I'm still here." And you're like, "What do you want?" I don't know if other characters do. I haven't played this on anything but Barbarian yet. But Barbarian's like, "What do you want?"
No, at least on Druid that does as well, but I think it's all characters.
Yeah, and there's just this great moment where Prava's like, "Look, you and I aren't friends, but I think you can agree that we could at least figure out how to work together at times. Even in hell, we managed to. Udavesh is going to kill everybody. The man's insane. He just wants to burn everything. You'd prefer me in charge than him." And you're like, "Okay, how do I trust you?" And she's like, "Simple, I'll help this person." And you're like, I don't know that I trust that, but the messenger is like, look, I got 2 broken legs. I need help badly. If she's going to help me, I'm willing to give a shot here. So you're like, all right, fine. Where did you see her? And she gives you like vague directions. Like she can't tell you, oh, she's right here, obviously, because then the expansion would be very short. So you head to you head basically to the border, to Nahantu. You're still in Hawazar, I think, but
Yes.
you're on the border with Nahantu. And after a whole bunch of fighting demons and plague monsters and meeting the mercenary Kai, Rahe? I can't remember his name either, Rahe. Everybody's got names that are just slightly off real names, and it throws me every time. You meet that dude. He's really cool. He wants to help you. This starts the whole mercenary thing, which is not technically part of the story, aside from the fact that it gives you a hub in Nahantu. So I'll just mention that you meet that dude. He offers to help you, but he can't leave the town that he's in because his daughter is there. And he's like, I swore to protect these children. You've swore to protect reality. I'm not going to ask you to betray your oath, but don't ask me to betray mine. You get out there and you're fighting your way through all these monsters. They're called hollows. They're erupting out of Nahantu. You got to make them stop. You find the source of them. And if you watched the trailer, it's the boat that Neyrelle was on when she lost control and Mephisto nearly erupted.
Well, I get there's one part that I think is missing here, because you do find this, and this is something they've dealt with before. This is not just because of Neyrelle. The way that they talk about it is that it was planted in the ground long ago when Mephisto corrupted.
Oh yeah, that's later that they do mention that. Yes,
right. But I want to make that perfectly clear. Like her coming through is what sort of woke them up more aggressively. But it's not. They don't exist because of her.
No, she didn't make them happen. What happens is Mephisto, when he temporarily establishes domination over her through the Soul Stone, he can now reach out because he's got this. He's currently in the driver's seat. But regardless, you're fighting your way through them. You basically fight your way to the boat, and that's when Udavesh Buddy shows up, and you have your confrontation with him. And here's where he basically pulls a move that I feel like, were I not as genre savvy as I am, I would have been like, you mother bleep. But instead I was like, oh, that's smart. That's smart. Because he doesn't try to fight you directly because you're you. Mm-hmm. Everybody else goes right at you. He knows I can't beat this person. This person successfully destroyed Lilith. This person fought their way to hell and back out and didn't end up a burned up mess of hamburger like I did. He does take off his mask to smoke a cigar. And by the way, I didn't know cigars in Sanctuary were like triangles.
Well, hold on a second. It's not a cigar. He's not smoking a cigar. It's a piece of charcoal. He's literally smoking a piece of charcoal, a square piece of burnt wood charcoal.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But I was like, maybe it's just a cigar. I don't know. But it definitely is weird looking. And he smokes it, and he's giving you his spiel about how, the rules have to apply to everybody. And, if we start making exceptions, where does it end? And you're like, dude, I don't believe in your religion in the first place. You worship a guy who very clearly didn't deserve to be worshipped. And the whole idea of the Cathedral of Light is based around the idea that this angel is going to lead us all to paradise. He's currently in pieces in hell somewhere. So yeah, I'm not going to help you. And you turn your back to go look where the direction Varel must have gone. I'm saying Varel, God, Neyrelle. And as you turn your back, he stabs you in the heart through your chest. And you fall into the river, and you're dragged along, and you see the lines from the prophecy, basically mirroring the beginning of the original campaign for Diablo 4. And then you get fished up out of the water by a guy who calls himself Eru. And Eru gives me real weird vibes. And I'll explain why later, but at the time he gave me really weird vibes. I keep feeling like this guy was in Diablo 2. I don't think he was, but I kept thinking he was.
He definitely, your interactions definitely have that sort of, that vibe, right? Like he knows more than he should. And there's a legitimate explanation for it later, but I'm with you. That was something that popped off almost immediately.
So he's like, you're in Nahantu, help is needed, help is given. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? And he goes, well, that's why I saved you from the water, but you're welcome, by the way. And you're like, yeah, thanks. I've learned to be suspicious of people who save me. Mm-hmm. And you go, and he's like, look, I'll help you find this Neyrelle person. And as you're going, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about with Joe happens, because to me, this is a huge, like, this is going to be important moment, and it's propped up by other things. But when you're going with him to find Neyrelle, you start having these pains. They're like, your heart starts thumping a bit. It's not like, it doesn't just debilitate you. It's just there. And you're like, oh, and he's like, what? And he goes, after a little while, like, you don't tell him at first. You just don't, it doesn't come up. There's other stuff happening. But eventually you tell him, look, I should tell you this if before you go too much further with me. I was fed the blood of Lilith, and every so often I still feel this thing, like a second beat or something in my chest, and it's distracting. And he tells you the story about a guy who's like lived in a village, and this death spirit showed up, and it was killing everything just by being there. And finally one of the spirit born went up to him and was like, why are you here? You're killing everything. And it's like, I'm lonely. So he bonded himself to the death spirit and left, even knowing that he'd never be able to return home to save his home. And you're like, and you're telling me this because, which again, I love that you can basically just say, could you just tell me what you're trying to tell me, instead of yet another story that I don't understand because it's got all context from your culture in it. But he does in fact say, look, what you did, you have to focus not on the cost to you, but on what you saved. You saved your home, the home, you saved it. You have to focus on that and not on the cost you paid. Spoilers for later in the game. But they make a point here that the blood of Lilith is still in you, and it's still affecting you. And that's something I really want to put a thumbtack in here, because when we get further on in this, that's an important note that I want to make. But you're looking for Neyrelle. You eventually find, like, I don't know how to explain this. You find the tomb of Akarat. Like, first, you don't actually find the tomb immediately, but you find this big memorial to Akarat. Mm-hmm. And Eru talks to Akarat, and Akarat talks to you. Right? And so there's a moment here where I was sitting there at my keyboard just going, holy bleep, they bleep and did it. I cannot bleep and believe that bleep and Akarat is in this bleep in game. And the best part, Joe and I once talked about this, going way back the first time we talked about Diablo 4. I don't know if Joe remembers this, but I do. When you talk further about Akarat to Akarat, Akarat tells you that Akarat doesn't know if it's like the actual real Akarat or not. Mm-hmm. Or if it's just a spirit that, is like an embodiment of what people believe about him, or a fragment of him put there by Akarat's main followers. Because Akarat had these followers called Dedicants, and they basically are the reason that the Zakarum faith exists. Akarat didn't want the Zakarum faith. He did not want a religion at all. He wasn't trying to create one. He wasn't interested in being the head of one. He didn't want to inspire one. He was just trying to do the right thing. And he fought Mephisto way before our knowledge of Mephisto being in, Travancore and Karast during Diablo 2, or the 1,000 years he was underground in the Soulstone. Before any of that, he and Mephisto and Akarat were fighting. Like, before the foundation of the Zakarum, before any of that, they'd already fought once. So Mephisto and Akarat have a history here that goes way beyond what we even knew about up to this point. And it works perfectly. Up front, yes, it's a retcon, because everyone's going to say that. Yeah, it's a retcon, but it's a retcon in the classic style. It doesn't change anything we already knew. It doesn't contradict anything we already knew. It just adds context. Why did Mephisto want to dump on the Zakarum so badly? Because he personally hates Akarat. Why does he personally hate Akarat? Because Akarat's the one who messed up his face. If you see the wolf with the messed up face that he's been using throughout this entire game, that's from Akarat. That's a gift from Akarat. Akarat messed up his face. So now you and Eru are like, okay, we're going to have to go through like these spirit caverns to get to where we can confront, like, we find Neyrelle. She's in the Durance of Mephisto. And that's basically a big prison. It's the prison that the original Horadrim built underneath Travancore to imprison the soul, Mephisto and his Soulstone. It's where it was kept. It's where the Quahagen got got possessed and corrupted, and all the Quahagans after him. Like the one that resisted got murdered. So the rest of them have all got corrupted. So you go down in there, and she's in there, but you can't reach her. You can't touch her. You can't do anything. If you disturb her or wake her out of the trance, she'll die. And Mephisto even says, "Go ahead and fight me. Bring war to me. You'll just kill her, and then I'll be free." So you're like, okay, what do I do now? Obviously, you don't trust Mephisto, but you're still like, okay, that sounds very much like something he'd do. So now I got to think about this. And that's when you and Eru basically experience the best and also most hilarious moment in any Diablo game. It's great. I love it. But at the same time, I hooted when I saw this because Akarat shows up as a gigantic glowing lion.
With really weird front paws that are very much like human hands.
Yeah. And he basically, I think I jumped up and said, he effing Aslan himself.
Yep. I said the same thing when I saw it. Almost identically. He
shows up. He basically tells you guys, you got to go and talk to this other, Abulan. Yeah, Abulan. You got to go talk to this Abulan spirit because if you don't, this is all going to go badly. If you try doing anything else, you're going to kill her.
Well, it's a little bit deeper than that. So, like, a lot of it is couched in mystery, too, when you deal with Akarat. Like, nothing is a direct answer. And this seems to be par for the course of beings of the spirit realm, which...
Especially, there's a point where Nerel even makes a point about this, where she asked him directly, why are you just tell us where it is? Why are you making us do this? And he goes, if you don't take the journey, you won't be who you need to be when you get there.
And I guess we should maybe talk about the spirit realm a little bit here, because with Akarat and everything that comes after, this is where it becomes relatively important. So
I'm going to actually stop you for a sec here, because I want to say something to you. I wanted to say something to you since I started playing this.
Yeah.
Did you notice something about the Spiritborn that seemed something that might have made your World of Warcraft self get interested?
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. It's a shaman.
Yeah, they're shaman. They're for all the talk of them being the monks from D3.
No, they're
really not.
They're enhancement shaman. They are 100% enhancement shaman, as described in the book.
It's not even remotely subtle. It's like, what the heck? This is I played one up to level 12, and I'm like, this is just a shaman.
Yeah,
look at all this stuff.
I literally had the same response.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the spirit realm, and I'm going to talk about the Spiritborn a little bit before I kick it over to Matt to continue on the storyline. So the spirit realm is a place that exists as sort of another plane in the Diablo cosmology. It's where spirit or basically the dead go, right? So at one point in time, we talked about where do the dead go, what happens with them, why are there so many ghosts on Sanctuary, but it turns out that there is actually a place that they can go to, they can ascend to. And it's a realm of essentially infinite possibilities. It
gets described at one point as being like, it's continuously changing, continuously chaotic, and it's as a result, it's destructive.
It's Empyrean.
Right? But it just keeps making... It's like the opposite of a death realm where everything is dead. This is a place that's just continuously alive as hard as it can be.
Well, the other thing that's interesting about it, too, is the origin of it. So it's a ghostly reflection of Sanctuary, but it's shaped by human beliefs. And humans are descendants of depowered Nephilim. So it wraps around, it warps around powerful souls, forms a reflection of real location. Human and animal spirits can reside here. You can summon spirits back from out of it. But it's go ahead.
I think it's... You know how the Burning Hells are basically the giant rotting corpse of Tathamet, and the primevals and all that stuff are born out of it. And then there's the Crystal Arch that the angels talk about coming back from. I think the place on the other side of the Crystal Arch is this, and I think it's Anu. I
was just going to say that. I think this is sort of the infinite potential of Anu.
Yeah, when the World Stone got blown up, this place was allowed to fully, to do what it was doing through the World Stone. Now it's doing it directly.
I think you might be onto something there. But yeah,
it's always been accessible, and it's just a really interesting thing about all the Nephilim and human stuff, and the fact that humans are at their core Nephilim, as you just pointed out, means that to a certain degree, the spirit realm is more in tune with us than it is with demons or angels.
Well, and the interesting thing about that is the spirit realm is noted as something that spirit guardians, which there have been several of them we've seen over the course of eons, they are essentially protecting the spirit realm, in particular from angels and demons. The angels and demons are very much interested in it. Not only is it very, very powerful, you can travel long distances in it from one area of sanctuary to another, possibly connecting to other planes. It could be a point to breach hell. It can also be a point to breach heaven, which I think is really, really fascinating. The Spiritborn in general tie into this as well, because they are essentially an entire culture born around protecting this and making pacts with the spirits that live in the spirit realm, right? They're from the jungles of Nahantu, which has always been a deep connection to the spirit realm. That's been since the very first days of the game. We've always known that. The interesting thing there, at least in my the way that I look at it, is that this also might have to do with why the swamps are as magical as they are, why so many witches exist in the swamplands, right? Because we talk about the veil being thin. Nahantu, the veil is very, very thin. There are literally places you can go and just walk through that put you into the spirit realm. And they talk about people disappearing if they're not careful, and never coming back. But the Spiritborn, the Guardians, focus on four main types of spirit energy, essentially. These are the Spirit Guardians that they essentially ask for power. They make a bargain with them. They bargain with these four primordial spirits. This is why Matt wanted to talk about this with me. They bond with these four essentially representations of primordial spirits, much in the same way that druids do, but from the spirit realm. So they're either the eagle, the gorilla, the jaguar, or the centipede, where the eagle is fast and focused on evasion and dealing lightning damage, or harnessing the effects of lightning and storm. Gorillas focus on physical damage, survivability, basically being big and strong and beefy. The jaguar focuses on speed and fire and basically being an offensive spirit, like moving quick, dealing sort of that quick in and out damage. And then the centipede, which is focusing on poison and debuffing and lifesteal, but that fits for the centipede because if you've ever seen centipedes, they're known as a carrion feeder for a reason, right? They take death and help turn it into life. They eat decaying matter and use it to basically process it, and then it's used as fertilizer or whatever in real world. It's phenomenal. And then spirit guardians, or in this case, the Spiritborn, can call upon multiple aspects of those guardians to sort of help them defend the spirit realm.
Yeah, you can basically, as a Spiritborn, you could try to focus on some stuff, or you can basically just pick whatever works for your particular style. But you're basically, it is extremely shamanic in that druids essentially, I feel like a druid becomes the thing. Like when you talk about what a druid does, they become the thing.
They take on that aspect, yeah.
Like they turn into a bear, they turn into a wolf, they turn into the storm. Like you're literally, like you're throwing lightning out of yourself and of yourself. The Spiritborn, they ask for help. And they're like, it's very much a help me to help you. And when they tell you in the origin of the Spiritborn, they talk about how like kids go forth into the wilderness essentially to find the spirits, and a lot of them just die. They just culled. They and I think that's because they have the potential, but the spirits judge them to be easily corruptible. And I think that's important because of what we're talking about in this expansion. You see what a corrupt Spiritborn can become. It's very bad. You don't want a corrupt spirit. So I think that's part and parcel of the whole thing. But once they make the pact, and once they make the deal, it's very much it's not mercantile. It's not like, I give you power, you do things for me. It's, we are in this together. I will give you my aid. You will use what I give you to save and protect your people and this place. And there's a lot of responsibility to it. It isn't transactional the way other things can be. And it's not, you don't become the thing. You're always aware that the thing is you are using this power to protect this power, because this power is far more important than you are. It's about life. This is life in its purest form, and you're using it to keep it safe. And there's just this really interesting mesh that actually comes through in the two main Spiritborn that we deal with in the story of the campaign. Each of them has a different take on it, despite the fact that one taught the other. And in a lot of ways, you get to see how this approach can fail, how it can succeed, and how it changes the person who uses it in a way that's really fascinating. But continue if you have more to talk about, because I know there's so much we could talk about.
There's so much that we can, and I want to keep moving forward. And I do eventually want to do a deep dive into the culture of Nahantu and the Spiritborn. But I think for the sake of time constraints, I think we're going to move forward and we're going to go ahead and continue with the story. So please, Matt, continue where you were after this. We're chasing after Akarat, following the clues that he's left behind for us, or have told us to go and do.
Yeah. He mentions a spirit named Abalon, who Eru knows. Abalon is actually one of the spirits who trained him, and they've got a very close relationship, although they haven't spoken in a while because, well, for one thing, Eru is very old now, and for another thing, Abalon basically pulled up stakes. He's like, I don't want to be involved in the mortal world anymore, and he went off, and nobody really knows where or why. And as you go back to the Karast itself, the main inhabited area of Karast. And by the way, Karast is a ruin now. It's actually fascinating to see how it fell almost completely apart, and how this main figure, Ornus, who gets mentioned in the game previously, like he gets mentioned a few times, he basically, through his Spiritborn abilities, essentially lets the spirits just use his body whenever they want to. He made a deal with them that, go ahead, whenever you want to, just step on in, but as long as you're helping me protect this place and these people. With their help, he managed to create pockets of people, like survivors, that rebuilt kind of slowly. It's almost like in Fallout. Like I remember thinking to myself, this is like if Karast was a Fallout. We've talked before about how this is the most Fallout-y Diablo game ever.
And to be fair, because this is post an apocalypse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the feeling. People were talking about there were pavilions of gold here, and someone was like, "Are you kidding me? Look at this dump. There's no pavilions of gold here." And they're like talking about the place that they only, like, keep in mind, this is 50 years after Diablo 3, which was like what? Easily that far from Diablo 2? It's been 100.
Yeah, I forgot what the actual timeline is. I'm gonna look it up, but yeah, it's not too far off.
It's been at least multiple generations since Karast was inhabited by anybody, and like they rebuilt it. They've been living there for at least some generations themselves post the apocalypse that Death Guy did in Diablo 3 Reaper Souls. Why can't I remember his name? Malthael. The Malthael killed like 9/10 of humanity. The poor huddled survivors were even more poor and huddled at this point. They've done their best. Karast is now kind of a city again. It's rebuilding slowly, but it's basically like these pockets of old Karast that they've inhabited, and then there's just wilderness between them. It's like if New York City was, failed in an apocalypse, and then Staten Island and the Bronx were now rebuilt and functioning as cities, and you could travel to them, but you had to go through demon-infested wilderness to get to Staten Island from the Bronx. It's like that. It's really fun and messed up. Go ahead.
The Darkening of Tristram, which is Diablo 1, takes place in year 1258. And then we are in what they call late year, which is end of days. And for Diablo 3 was 1285. And then it continues to go through the Great Enmity, which happens after Malthael, what we were just talking about. Age of Hatred, which is what we're in right now, is 1337.
So about 50 years from Diablo 3. So give me the years for Diablo 1 and Diablo 3 again.
So Diablo 4 starts in 1336. Mm-hmm. Diablo 3 is 1285, and Diablo 1 is sorry, I just said it, 1258.
So it has been basically since Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 were right after each other. Like Diablo 2 is the same. It's basically like a month later. You're following the guy who how much long is Diablo
6 years.
Huh.
1258 is when Diablo 1 happens, and then 6 years later, which is where Diablo 2 starts, is in 1264.
So you're still looking at,
it's very close.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 1264 to now, which is 1330 something, it's been 80 something years. And in that time, like the city you see in Diablo 2 is just fragments. It's like literally like pieces of the city that have recovered, but most of it is just this crushed wilderness. And it's really, like I said, it's really post-apocalyptic and interesting. You're going through, you're finding the ways to find Abulan. You have to go to Karast, the part where the city is actually run by the council that runs it, and most of them are kind of useless. But you meet Maka and Ornis. Ornis is interesting because, like I said, possessed by spirits, basically lets them ride him around whenever they want. Maka, who is actually Eru's student, but Eru is ancient, so at this point she's like in her 50s or 60s. She's no kid. She kind of disagrees with him about a lot of stuff. Like she thinks he's too focused on Nahantu. And he every time he talks to you, he talks about Nahantu. He's like, Nahantu must be protected. We have to go, find your friend Nerel because this is, damaging Nahantu. And even Ornis corrects him at one point and goes, it doesn't do us any good to save Nahantu if we don't stop Mephisto. Mephisto came here and fought Akarat and left all this. When Joe talked about all the stuff that it's not really Nerel's fault, all the hollows, all that evil stuff, Mephisto brought it with him the first time he attacked.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't been able to get rid of it because they haven't been able to get rid of him. Like, keep in mind that the Dark Exile, when the three primevals came to Sanctuary, never ended. Like, they never went away. They never went back to hell and stayed there. They keep coming back. And it just means that Mephisto's influence over Nahantu is still there, buried in the ground, buried in the soil, buried in the people's hearts. And that's something that really does make a lot of sense when you get to the end of this campaign. But so Ornis corrects, Eru tells me, we need to stop Mephisto. It benefits us nothing to just send them away. Like you're saying, well, now that once we get this girl, we got to get rid of her. No, we have to end this. Not to half measures are not what we need. And so Maka decides to help you find Abulan. You have to go and look at all these ancient, I want to say tapestries, they're not. They're stone carving.
Tablets. They're tablets.
Yeah, they're tablets. You have to go look at all these ancient tablets and work out what happened to Abulan. And a lot of times they're like broken or whatever, so you have to kill a whole bunch of stuff to find the fragments. It's Diablo. You know what's going on. Eventually you figure out where to go to talk to Abulan. And in the process, it's revealed that essentially Abulan is the reason Spiritborn exist.
Mm-hmm.
Because Abulan, in a way, the reason that Abulan meets the fate that they meet could very well be because they chose to share themselves with all these Spiritborn.
Well, if they don't forget, Eru tells you the story of the first Spiritborn, which is you're making the assumption that it's Abulan, but it's a pretty good guess, right?
Yeah, it's an assumption, but it's based on the relics. I mean, on the tablets.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is like the story that Eru tells you when you're going through and it tells you about Spiritborn and what they do is that the first Spiritborn was a child, and it was a child who, there's this spirit, then everywhere the spirit went, death followed, and the boy could see the spirit and asked, why are you doing what you're doing? And the spirit said, I'm lonely. And so the boy said, okay, well, I'll walk with you. And they went off together. And it may be a parable, but it may also be the true story of Abulan and how Abulan became a Spiritborn and then taught those that came after. And those tablets very much lend the hint that Abulan is the little boy.
Yeah, or the spirit that is Abulan was the little boy.
Yeah,
or
that's what I mean.
Or the spirit that is Abulan was that spirit.
Yeah, or could be the original spirit. Yes.
Because the thing is, Abulan is the guardian of veils. He keeps things separated.
And the veil is what separates the spirit realm from us.
He's the anti-soulless from Dragon Age. He's like the opposite of that guy. He wants to keep the veils there. So you're going around looking for Abulan. You find all this out, Eru and Maka are like, wow, this is amazing. But when you actually get to a point where you have to go into the spirit world physically, and they can do it because they're spirit-born. But if you're not playing a spirit-born, and I wasn't, I don't know.
That seems amazing. I haven't done it as a spirit-born yet.
I don't know if when you go into the spirit-born that if it's different, but they tell you straight up, this is going to hurt you a lot. You'll go insane. There's no way you can possibly endure the pain. And your response is like, I can do pain. Like, just let's get it done. Like, to get to Neyrelle, I have to. Because there's a really interesting thing. Joe mentioned this. Joe touched on it. But of all people, Mephisto is the one. To me, it's brilliant because once again, it shows you that Mephisto, it never actually lies. Lying is beneath Mephisto.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't tell you the whole truth? Oh God, no. But lying? No, that's Belial's stuff. There's a reason Belial was like his second. The lesser evil that was studied at the feet of the primeval. Mephisto says to you, you stood there and let a child make the decision that you should have made. And now here we are. And you had reasons, and you will, and when you finally get there, you'll talk about that. But at this point, your character is driven to get to Neyrelle. They're in a way, they've been pointed in the direction Mephisto wants them to go. Because they are like now all-consuming guilt makes them want to get there and save this kid. And you're kind of operating like you're being more reckless than you normally would be. And it's actually, you can see it in the storyline. You're watching this going, I'm not usually this aggressive about things. I usually stop and think a little more than this. You get there, they tell you in order to open this portal, it's going to hurt you like unbearably. You're going to feel like you're dying. You're going to go insane. You won't be able to handle it. And you're like, I can do it. They open the portal and it does hurt that much. And it's really cool how they show you going through this magnificent, constantly changing, malleable, and you're like going the whole time. And they're like, that feeling is you trying to rip apart because of all the possibilities around you happening at once. Just grit down. You got to get through this. You get to where Albalan is. And at first, Eru says, he looks okay. Maybe we got here in time. And I actually turned to Eru and Matthew, the player, said, why did you say that? Do you not know what game you're in, Eru? Because sure enough, Albalan's not fine. Albalan is heavily corrupted by Mephisto's influence. And you fight Albalan, and in front of Eru, who loves Albalan like a father, you kill Albalan. And then you rip Albalan's heart out. And this is Eru's idea.
Hold on a second. There's also two other things that happen here that I think are important. Maka is telling you and Eru that there is no other option and that he needs to be put down. Eru the entire time is screaming at you not to hurt him, despite, what is very clearly in front of his face. Please continue.
Like Joe just said, all that stuff Joe just said. And then as you get there, you like literally, when you kill him, you're looking at the body and you're like, now what? How is Albalan going to help Neyrelle? And I think it's Maka who says, the corruption hasn't reached his heart. So, and Eru is like the one who does it because he doesn't want to let anyone else do it. They rip out Albalan's heart to give it to Neyrelle.
Yeah.
Maybe the heart can give her enough, because the whole point is you can't do it for her. You can't just save her. You have to give her the ability to save herself. So they do this, they pull out the heart, and now you have to go back and find Neyrelle inside the Durance of Hatred. And the whole time, Eru's changing. Like Eru is like, I can't, we brought this here. This is on me for helping. His death is on my head because I helped you. It's on her head for bringing this here. It's on your head for letting it happen. And he still keeps helping you, but he's being like, he's starting to say these kind of things. You go down and you get to the Durance of Hatred. Obviously, Neyrelle has moved. Neyrelle is not where she was. You fight your way through the place. You find her. You essentially, this is very complicated, but I'm going to try to break this down really to as simple as possible. Ideal. You get her to eventually recognize that you're there, while she keeps exploding with more hollows and stuff. And eventually she realizes that you're real. Like, that's part of the problem, is when you're holding on to the soul stone and Mephisto's going full court press on your brain, you can't tell what's real and what's not. So You get her to believe that you're real. You tell her that the heart is there and she has to eat it. And it's this giant heart. Like, it's huge. It's like the size of a basketball. And this girl with only one hand, mind you, has to reach out, grab this giant thing, and eat it in front of you. Thank God you don't have to actually watch this. But in so doing, she is blessed essentially by the power of Abulan. And she, for a while, manages to like regain control over the Soul Stone and like kind of fuse it shut to get Mephisto's influence to shut up. I believe Akarat himself shows up here again.
Yes.
And essentially shows up, big long lion.
Stands over Nerel.
Yeah.
Protectively.
And you basically find out after this point, as you have to go back to Karast proper with Nerel and talk about what needs to be done next. Nerel eventually reveals that Akarat's been in her head for a while too. Like he lured her here. He brought her here to do all this stuff. And that's where you get the line about, I asked him why he didn't just tell me where to go. And he says, I have to go through all this to be the person I have to be when I get there. And I love how she sounds exasperated and a child. Like she does sound very much like an angry child when she says this. There's also great
because spoilers, she is an angry child.
Yeah. There's actually great moments between your character and Nerel. Like, played it on a barbarian, it works really well. I don't know about other classes. I'm assuming it works on druid. But she sort of tells you, you pushed it on me. Why did you do that? Why did you make me do it? And he goes, I had Lilith's blood in my veins, and I had Mephisto in my ear. I couldn't trust anything I thought. Like, any impulse I had, I was it the right thing, or was it just them influencing me? I had to trust you. Of our group, I was the fist. Donan was the
Donan was their stone mage.
Yeah,
no.
Donan was the stone mage.
No. Donan was our leader. Lorath was our stone mage.
No, it's the other way around. He said
was it the other way around? Okay.
Yeah, Donan was our stone mage. Lorath was the leader, and you were our heart. You were the one who kept us on point. And it's like I knew I couldn't trust myself, but I knew I could trust you. And it's a good moment because it explains why you did this thing. Because it is, on the face of it, you look at it and go, this is completely insane that you let a child make this choice instead of you. But yeah, because again, that whole bit about having Lilith's blood in her comes up again, and it's going to come up one more time and be very important. So then you go and you're like, all right, what's the deal? Again, at this point, Eru was like, look, I did what I said I would do. I think you should leave. Like, take this thing and get the heck out of Nahantu. And Maka's like, that's ridiculous. If they do that, then what? Then the rest of the world dies, and then eventually it's just Nahantu? You think he's going to stop then? And Ornis, who's the leader, is like, yeah, no, this needs to be ended. Like, we cannot play kick the can here. It would be like being an order of mages who decide to create a magical weapon to contain, demon lords without ever stopping to think about what do they do with them afterwards. I mean, it's just ridiculous. You would never do that. That's my slight dig at the Haradrim for today. So yeah, like, okay, so what's the deal? And Nerel's like, well, okay, we need to find the tomb of Akarat. If we go in there, there's this well of power that I can sense that it's right here. It's in all these books. We can go there. We can make use of that to bind the soul stone, and I can finally let it go. And it won't just immediately erupt. And
Eru freaks out like immediately. Yeah. Like, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? That'll just hurt the spirit realm. And that will just corrupt Akarat's tomb and all this other stuff. And then Nerel looks at him and just says, because Akarat told me to.
Yeah. And even Maka makes the point, yes, the spirit realm will be corrupted, but the spirit realm is ever changing. The corruption can't hope to it'll do something and the spirit realm will change, but the spirit realm's always changing. That's what it does. So this plan is ridiculous, but it is the only plan we currently have. And I think that's my favorite line, because that's Ornis is like, since you are not actually offering a plan, just criticizing, we're going to have to keep going with the plan we have because it is the only plan we have. And Pharaoh's like, fine, I'll help you. But he's very sullen about it. Maka's like, I'll help too. And as you're doing the next bit, which is trying to find the clues you need to find the tomb of Akarat, Maka and Nerel kind of start bonding. Because at first Nerel is fine. She's back. But of course Mephisto didn't give up. So it starts all over again. She starts hearing the voices. She starts having the episodes. And she keeps going, like, trying to fight it. And Nerel's like, you can't fight pain. Don't fight it. Let it work through you. Let it move through you. I can, we trust you. We will be here with you. We will help you. I will help you. And you finally, at one point, you have to go, and you're being followed by the burning knights, which, by the way, is the other reason Ornis is like totally down with helping you, because the Cathedral of Light can go F itself. He frankly says this. He's like, do you want the Cathedral of Light running around here telling us what to do? Like, is that what you're looking for? Because that's what I see, and I do not want that. So you eventually realize, okay, these Cathedral Knights, the Cathedral Light Burning Knights dudes, they're getting in our way. I got to go take care of them. So Nerel, stay here. Try not to, go evil. I'll be right back. And you run up and you kill, what's his name? I can't remember his name. I even said his name in this episode, and I can't remember it now.
Uva.
Yeah, we go kill that dude. There's actually a really interesting conversation with him where he's again trying to do the whole, people have to be equal. You're like, no, man, you don't belong here.
Well, the interesting thing is like he says, you would face me. I would have brought you back to Kovashad and had you stand a fair trial. He says this to your face after he stabbed you through the back, through the heart, out the front of your chest, and then tossed you into the river.
Yep. He does say that to you. And it's hilarious how little you care. And you're like, nope, you are at best a complication. I have things to do. You're in my way.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, you're not even angry with him. Like, there's no rage. This isn't a fit of vengeance over what he did to you. This is, you're a distraction. I can't afford it. And that, to me, is the best part of the whole thing. Because it shows that the character is not unbalanced, and it's not putting their needs ahead of the bigger picture. It's a calculated look. I can't do this with these guys constantly chasing me and trying to kill me. So you go, you take care of him. When you get back, however, Maka is fatally wounded and is dying because Nerel lost control. And Eru is like beyond himself.
Immediately blames Nerel. What have you done? Look what you did. Yeah.
And Maka even says it wasn't her. Don't blame her. Blame the stone. And he doesn't really accept this, but he's like, I can't help you anymore. I've done all I can for you. And you're like, all right, I am sorry about Maka's death, but if we don't get this done, it's going to get worse. So you take Nerel and the two of you head on. I forgot to mention the thing Nerel said before she started having fits again, where she looks at the burning knights and she's like, it's like it's kind of an embarrassment, really. It's like it's a vanity thing. They're doing this. We actually went to hell and came back, and they're all burning themselves on purpose to say they're like touched by the experience. It's like, it's insulting. I don't know why, but that got me. I was like, Nerel, you are savage. You just called them posers.
Yeah.
It's just you're running down you're going through the entire zone to get to the tomb. The area where the tomb actually is really interesting, and it's got a lot of story in terms of how it is set up. You find all the clues you need to get there. You get there, you go into a tomb where everybody else usually dead ends, and you actually find the two of you figure out what this means, and you head south, and Eru shows up. And he's like, I need to see this through. I'm going to help you. I'm trying to go faster because we don't have a ton of time left. You go through the whole area.
I don't know that we're going to finish the campaign today, and I think that's okay. We can do a second episode.
Okay, but okay. All right, I'm just going to say that we'll stop there then. Eru shows up and is like, I got to see this through. I've got to help you, even though I blame you. I'm angry, but this needs to be done. So I'll help you. And yeah, you head south to where the now location of the Tomb of Akarat is.
And this is one of those moments where, and Matt and I, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. Eru is one of those people that you meet in a game as an NPC and you just kind of don't trust. And it's at this moment that I immediately went, there's a heel turn coming. And I don't know, because I haven't gotten much further past this part, and I'm really interested to see if I'm right about this. But it just struck me as his delivery was really cold and mechanical and not resigned, not in the I'm going to honor Maka's memory. It was very, no, I'm going to see this through the end. This is going to happen, when everything beforehand was he was going to walk away from it. So I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this on the next episode, because boy howdy, we're gonna have some plenty to talk about. I'm confident.
Oh yeah, as someone who has been there, yeah. One thing I did want to talk about, because we didn't get too much time, is in your conversation with Vistos, one of the things he says, he calls you, specifically you, child of my child. He's not talking about all humans. He's talking about you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, plus the existence of the blood of Lilith in him, Mephisto makes the point when you're trying to break Nerel free the first time that he and Nerel are linked inextricably through the Soul Stone, just as you and Lilith are. He doesn't say were. And you keep having those flashes where your heart suddenly, it's like you feel almost a second heartbeat. I think the ultimate villain of Diablo 4 isn't Diablo. I think it's you, because I think you are going to turn into Lilith.
So yeah, and there's
this is just a theory I have. This is not, but I'm basing it on the stuff that I'm seeing in the game.
I had the first initial same thought as you when it came to that. And we'll stop after this, I think, because
okay.
But one of the moments that they talk about the blood still being in you and you still always having that connection, it was one of those things where I started going through everything in my head of what's happened in the past in the Diablo series. It may have also happened that I was watching an episode of Actually where they were talking, one of the questions was about the very first Diablo game, but every single time a prime evil has taken over a host body, it's because a piece of them, whether it was the soul stone that contained their essence, whether it was, a ritual or whatever the case is, or yeah, they are inside of the host. And what are you if not a host? And
yeah, I mean, technically Lilith's not a primeval, but she is the daughter of a primeval. It's close enough.
Yeah, but I think this is going to actually start pulling into question, and I think this expansion is really going to do it. And I think inevitably we're going to get another expansion, because there's
they've said they're working on one.
Yeah,
they've been working on one this whole time.
Yeah, so there you go. But I think this is going to start throwing into question what is a primeval, because even the lesser evils, and I'm air quoting that because they're still pretty damn powerful.
Yeah, lesser only in comparison.
But they get reborn all the time. So
here's the thing too. Here's the other thing that I've been thinking about from Diablo 4, and I don't want to keep us here all day. In Diablo 4, when you are talking to Lilith in that mind prison, she constantly tries to get you to see things her way. And I believe it was Liz, when we were talking about it, made the point that a lot of the stuff we see her do is terrifying and horrible, but some of it, she went to see her son and her son had been murdered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she wants to, she believes that what she's doing is necessary. You do what you think is necessary.
She loves humanity in her own twisted way.
Yeah, I honestly feel like by the end of this, when I say that you're going to be Lilith, I don't know if you literally will turn into Lilith, but I do think by the end of it,
you might be the head of the cult.
Yeah, I think that I can imagine by the end of this that your character has much of the same viewpoint as Lilith.
Well, and the other thing that I think is interesting is that, and again, I'm not trying to keep us here forever, but one of the things that they force you to watch at the beginning of the game is a recap when you launch the expansion. And in that expansion is literally Lilith's last words, which is, "Without me, there is no victory." And you start thinking about what she was doing. She was rejecting heaven and hell. She wanted to take their power, their conflict, for herself, sure.
Yeah. One of their plans was to use one of the lesser evils as a battery.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see where we're going, because I think you're right. There's a lot of stuff that are just leading me down the path of, that meme of Thanos was right. We've been saying it forever. Lilith was right. On a lot of the stuff, she just objectively was correct. And so I'm curious to see how they play on that, because they definitely seem to be playing on that, or at least laying the seeds to play on it. So I'm here for it one way or another. But I think we're going to end it there. So this is going to be a part 1. We're going to do a part 2 at some point. We have another episode of the Dragon Age coming up. We're probably going to have that come out after the second Diablo episode is live. And if you haven't listened to our other shows for Dragon Age and you're interested in that, I highly recommend going through and listening to those as well. Not just because I want you to listen to our stuff, but we got Liz to talk a lot, because Liz joined us and she's very much into Dragon Age. And getting her to open up about those games was really great because it was an extra perspective that Matt and I just don't have. So it was nice to get those in there. But I will do my normal outro here, which is the reminder that Blizzard Watch is made possible due to your generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means that this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, better chance of having your question answered on our podcast with the Q&A and answer site experience. If you have questions for us, I do encourage you to send them in, especially if you have any about Diablo, the expansions, or anything that's being revealed. Now's a prime time for it. You can send those into... Time. You got it. You can send those into podcast@blizzardwatch.com. Specify the show that it's for in the subject line and any special pronunciations for your names. If you don't want to hit us up on email and you would rather give us a ping on Discord, we have 2 channels set aside. We have the Q&A Podcast Questions channel, which is open for everybody. And we have the Patreon Q&A Podcast Questions channel, which if you are a Patreon supporter, you can put it in there. We tend to look there first as a way of saying thank you. You can also send us questions through Patreon if you don't want to send an email or use Discord. So you have many, many options to get to us. But with that, folks, we'll see you next week.